Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to join us for the fourth and final session of the Guardian TIFF Talks series. It's been a really wonderful partnership with the Guardian this year, and we really hope to continue this collaboration for the coming years. Today's session is profiling the film Christine, which will be screening in TIFF's special presentations program tonight at the Elgin at 6 p.m. Please join me in welcoming, first, our host of this session, Nigel Smith, entertainment writer for The Guardian US, and he'll introduce you to our special guests. Nigel?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming to the last TIFF Talk. It's been great to have you and to have the talent come to speak with everyone. So today we're going to be talking about an awesome film called Christine, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and now is enjoying a Canadian premiere at TIFF. So please welcome the writer of the film, Craig Shilowich. And then, no, sitting here close to me. And then we have the director, Antonio Campos. And of course, the star of Christine, Rebecca Hall. That's a nice warm welcome. How's it going, everyone?
Good.
Good. So when did the film screen in Toronto? I saw it back at Sundance. Have you had a public screening yet here?
It's tonight.
It's tonight.
Yeah, it's tonight at 6.
Yeah.
Do you guys all get nervous before premiering a film, even if you've already world premiered it elsewhere?
I do.
I do.
Yeah.
I'll get nervous before every public screening when it comes out
Yeah?
in theaters.
In theaters.
So my days are going to be
Like
awful.
at like 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock,
Yeah, 1
5
o'clock,
o'clock.
3 o'clock. I'll just be quietly freaking out wherever I am.
Yeah. Now, since there's no film trailer for the film yet, can I get one of you, maybe Craig, do the honors of describing exactly what Christine is about?
Tony, do you want to do it?
No.
No?
Christine is about a broadcast journalist in the early 1970s, working in a local market in Sarasota, Florida, who is battling a host of demons.
Yeah.
And it sort of watches her struggle daily to overcome personal issues, professional problems. And that's what the movie's about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, Antonio, you're obviously drawn to really complex psychological dramas about pretty tortured characters.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get a shout out for people who've seen Simon Killer in the room? Yeah, okay. So we have some fans, and of course, Afterschool. Woo!
My mom in the back.
What draws you to these types of stories? They can't be fun to delve into. They're quite challenging, I imagine.
It's a very good question because I think about it a lot too. Why these characters? Why these stories? With this there's a kind of between all the films that I've been involved in, there's this kind of menagerie of complicated, tortured people, and I think it's just I find them fascinating. I think that they all in some way reflect some part of me. None of them are sort of completely autobiographical, but they each in some way speak to something that I've dealt with or thought about, or some dark corner of the mind that I'm interested in going into. And I think ultimately I don't in life and in the films I don't judge people. I'm interested in watching and trying to understand people, and these are characters that I think people don't understand. They're misunderstood, and I'm interested in trying to understand them, and in that process, trying to understand myself and those parts of myself. So I think that's the reason, and I also just I do in all these films that you mentioned, Simon Killer and Afterschool, as well as Christine, obviously, and Christine has the most humor. There is humor and there's life, and it's not all dark. Sometimes you can laugh. Sometimes you're laughing at something because it's just shocking or bizarre. But there is a humor that I find that I also just find in life, day to day.
And Rebecca, can you talk about that tonal balance of the humor, the tragedy of the tale? I mean, it's a dark comedy in parts, but there are laughs. and how you judge that in your performance?
I don't think it's something that I think about consciously. I don't think you can have tragedy without comedy. I don't think there's anything in life that's true if it doesn't contain both at the same time. And if I'm being true to the moment, then if the comedy is present, then it will come out, and if it's not, then it won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Now, Antonio, this does mark a departure. I mean, we talked about the similarities between all three films, but this is the first film that you didn't write, and it's also your first film centered on a female protagonist. Was that scary, kind of letting go of the writing part and putting your trust in a script that you yourself didn't
No, it was
birth?
it was a relief.
Yeah.
Because I could, when I've written, it's like you enter that hole, and this time, I could look at Craig and be like, okay, so now you figure
Get in
that
the
shit
hole,
out.
yeah.
Like there's a bit of like, well, now we've recognized the problem. Not my job to figure it out. It's your job. And obviously it was very collaborative and it was very open. But we actually had a whole conversation about this today, and it was a process in the beginning to sort of, for me, having to learn how to work with a writer as a director, because I have only written before, and when I didn't direct, I was when I didn't direct my own things, I was producing something for somebody else, so it's a different dynamic. And for Craig, it's the first time that this is the first script that had gotten produced, and he was learning about that process, and so there was a learning curve in the beginning, and ultimately I think we came out of it, and I've left this experience very excited about this part of the process of collaborating with a writer, and I would, if I am going to write again, and which I am, I'm writing with somebody else. Yeah.
And for both you and Craig, what was it like to enter the psyche of a female character?
It was difficult. I mean, it was hard, and it involved a lot of talking to each other and talking to women and talking to people who, knew Christine, the real person. It was pretty research intensive, and we wanted to do right by her, this person, but also we wanted to do right by women, and we wanted to accurately portray not just her experience, but like a female experience. But it was tricky, and you're checking it every step of the way, every scene, every line, making sure that it holds up, and I think it does.
And I think, ultimately, we look to Rebecca.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can speak a little bit to this, what you're talking about,
Yeah.
being the lady in the situation.
Exactly.
But I definitely remember having the moment of reading the script and thinking, this is yes, it's a shocking story. I mean, when I came to it, I sort of read the synopsis blurb before I read anything else. And I think if you Google Christine Chubbuck, that's how a lot of people come to this story, is they read this sort of 4-line reductive statement about the thing that she did that makes her famous. And it was very shocking and upsetting, and I think most people have that reaction of feeling shocked and upset and think, what a horrifying thing. Like, how can that... I don't know what I think about that, and I certainly felt that. But the fact that I felt that made me realize that it was important to make the film, because without the film, that's where she's left, and the film humanizes her. And when I read the script, I thought, wow, this is a film being made by 2 men, and it's possibly the most honest, true, relatable female story with a female at the center that I have ever come across. And so when we met, I remember having this minute of like, I've got to take them to take them to task a little bit. Okay, gentlemen, like, how are you going to make this female story? What do you think about this female story? And the truth is, they both come to it really personally, especially Craig, and they have a very personal relationship with the material, and that's why it has that ring of honesty.
Can you talk about that personal relationship to the material? What exactly is she
sure. I
referring
mean,
to?
I like many people, just kind of stumbled across the reductive version of her life story on the internet. Like one night, it's like more interesting than that. I clicked on a website that was like the 10 craziest things that have ever happened on television, and her story was one of them. But something really resonated with me. I really clicked into her story, and it felt. The more I dug, the more I related to it, because I went through a period of pretty prolonged mental illness. I had a very long depressive episode from when I was like 19 to like 24 or 25. Okay. Like debilitating, like had to leave college, like went back to move with my parents, that kind of a thing. So it kind of came out of nowhere, like when I noticed that the wheels in my head were like wobbling a little bit. Mm-hmm. But previously I'd been, like straight A student in high school, I went to NYU, I had a lot of friends, and then somewhere along the way, like something just went off track, and I spent a lot of time during that period trying to figure out why. Is it just a biochemical thing, or is it my relationship with my parents? Is my upbringing, contributing to this? Was us fighting so much at the end of high school sort of putting me in this place? I'd just broken up with my high school girlfriend. Was it that? 9/11 had just happened. There was this like terrible, external circumstance going on. And the more I thought about it, the further away I got from trying to figure it out. But part of being sick in that way is it has this obsessive quality, and you're just focusing on the feeling, which is, pain, sometimes like physical pain, and then oftentimes a dissociated sort of like blank feeling where you don't even feel like yourself or connected to yourself. And this was a long time in my life. But also, during that time, I had friends, I went to parties, I went to jobs, like I had a day-to-day life, and a lot of people looking at me would never have known that, if I hadn't told them. And then similarly, on the other side of it, I kind of came out of this period and couldn't really account for why, in the same way I couldn't really account for how I had gotten in the first place. I got a girlfriend, I got really into working production on movies. I threw myself into work, I really focused on all of that stuff, but I still spent a lot of time like figuring out like, well, how did I get back on track? Was it the medication? Was it this? Was it that? And I never could come up with an answer. And I'd lived through it, like I couldn't, having even been that character, like in that personal drama, like I couldn't tell you what happened. I can tell you what I think contributed to it. But it was like a scary time. And then when I found, Christine's story, I was like, wow, like what if what if you took work away from me? Like what if the work that sort of like gave me something to focus on turned on me? What if I didn't have this like loving relationship? And like what if I was a woman, in a workplace that was dominated by men? Like it's not so hard to begin to understand like how things might go the way they went. Mm-hmm. So I was interested in sort of exercising a personal feeling I had and representing it and being honest to it and kind of showing people in a plain-faced way that humanizes this person, like how this might have gone. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
There you go.
Yeah.
I haven't really talked about it until today.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing
no problem.
that.
Sorry, did I just make you do that?
No, it's okay. No, I think it's like it's important. I think that's where it comes from. It's like a personal thing.
Well,
You sense that
so much
watching the
stigma
film.
about it. It's
You
good
really
to-
do.
Yeah.
Well, then going off of that, not to belabor a point, but there's not that much about Christine out there in the world. That there's a documentary that actually I think came out this summer called Kate Plays Christine that kind of exposes that fact, delves into that. Did you rely on Craig's personal story to help ground your character, given that it's hard to really do a lot of research on this person?
I didn't want to do a lot of research. We spoke about it and we all decided that I shouldn't talk to people who knew her, who are alive. I think there are very concrete reasons for that.
Yeah.
I trusted that the research that Craig had done by speaking to them and I was faithful to the script. Craig gave me 20 minutes of footage of her doing her morning show, a very sort of dry section where she's interviewing someone about a zoning petition, and which is really all there is out there. And I decided that was all I wanted to have because I think, the question of allegiances and sources and going to people who went through this or were near her when this happened is complicated because for them it was a very, very personal trauma. It was a private trauma for them. The act itself is actually a public one because she forced it into the public consciousness by doing what she did live on television in 1974. What society is left with is a bunch of questions and a bunch of shock and a bunch of so many things. And frankly, it's art's responsibility to grapple with that. And that's why we have artistic license and artistic freedom and all these things that get bandied around, is that it's important to take something like this and turn it into a universal situation in the way that Craig's personal relationship with it has that. It's that kind of alchemy of those two things make it something that's for all of us and make sense of it somehow and grapple with it in that way. And that's, I think, a really important thing to do. And I personally wanted to have that freedom portraying her so that I could find the most honest way for me to play this person, not that was beholden to another person's idea of her, with all the respect in the world to the people that know her and knew her.
Now, to lighten the mood a little bit, let's talk about your look in the movie. Now, you really do resemble her. You got the dark eyebrows, the darker hair. How did that physical transformation help inform your character?
Massively. Massively. I don't think of myself as a method actor. I don't really know what school of acting I subscribe to. I think my relationship with process changes according to the material. I think that with this it was funny because there was a sort of 3-month process where I had to build the character from my imagination, from talking to Antonio, from talking to Craig, and we really thrashed it out during those 3 months, and I was privately working away at it and finding the voice and thinking about the look, and I was, sketching her in a way, but we actually shot it for only 29 days.
Wow.
But I say that thing about method acting because whether I liked it or not, by the time I got the hair on and the eyebrows and the clothes and the jewelry and I had internalized her so much, it was sort of awkward to be anything but her. And I think that, and I think of the clothes and the look of it as actually kind of a saving grace because it was a way of ending the day when I got to take it all off and be me again. And if I'd looked more like myself, I think that would have been harder.
Yeah, yeah. Was she tough to let go of at the end of the shoot?
She was literally tough to let go of. Funnily enough, we shot the infamous scene on my last day of shooting.
Wow.
And I think it was indicative that we were doing our job well, that we got to that point in shooting, and we'd all sort of developed this kind of love for her and care for her, which is reflective of what we want to achieve with the movie. When we want the audience to get to that point and desperately not want her to die. And when we shot it, I found it so hard to kill her. And we all did.
My wife was the editor on the film, Sofia Supercaso, and we had this consistent experience where when we'd seen the film 1,000 times, but we'd both have a same kind of feeling of like, oh, maybe she won't do it this time, because we really didn't want her to. And when Rebecca left, and with Rebecca leaving, Christine, the character, left, and we were shooting the few scenes that don't have her in them, it did feel like there was an absence, and it was a very weird thing to experience. Like we'd all kind of like, oh, I guess she's gone now, and it was palpable, and so I think that's a credit to how transformative you were, and that we felt like we weren't around you, we were around Christine for those 29 days. It was a very strange experience. I don't think I've ever had that experience as a director. Yeah.
Does anyone who knew Christine, had they seen the film?
There is, well, we know for sure there is this one person, and he has seen the film, and he has said very complimentary things about about the way we portrayed it, and the way Rebecca portrayed her, and the way the story is told. But that'll actually, there'll be something coming out about that pretty soon.
Can't talk about that quite yet.
Yeah, we can't.
Someone's doing an article about it.
Someone's doing an article
Okay,
very
okay.
soon about that.
They're going to be doing Q&As with you, or?
I don't know if they're going to do Q&A, but they're doing an interview.
Okay.
Yeah. So
All right.
when we heard that, it was very reaffirming.
Yeah. Okay, so watch this space, folks. We're going to open it up to the audience. The lights are going to come up, and if you have a question, please just raise your hand, and there's mics on either end. Should have prepared you a little more, sorry. No? All right. Well, oh, here we go. There you go.
Hi. I saw the film. It's one of my festival favorites. I just wanted to ask what it was like to obtain the rights to tell that story, and whether that was a difficult process, and who you had to talk to.
The rights for this story, because of the nature of the act, it was public domain. It's a story that's, once someone does something like this, it's out there. And there was a good amount written about it, not a lot, but a good amount, and enough. And then Craig did additional research, but the rights are out there. I mean, basically, because of the nature of the thing that she did.
Yeah, why do you think that is? That people have just been afraid to
I
go
think
there?
The question was, why is it that this story took so long to be told? And I think that, having experienced the making of it and the creation of it, and Craig had worked on it for years before I came along, and it's a difficult story to tell. I mean, when you're telling the story of a character who's the person that's driving the movie, and who you're following, and then she's going to commit suicide, it's a really tricky one to wrap your head around, and then
It's a woman.
and
How
it's
to get
a-
funding.
Yeah.
and it's a woman.
There were a couple of people along the way that did try to make this into a movie, and it's been like 40 some years, but there's been at least 2 attempts to make a movie out of this, one of whom was one of her coworkers, who was her friend, just sort of became obsessed with what happened and wrote a screenplay and was like running around with it for years trying to get some kind of traction on it. And that person's since passed away, and I couldn't get that script, but I would be really curious, to see it one day. And then at some point in I think like the 80s, someone had tried to option one of the articles that had been written about her. So people have at least entertained this idea.
I just have a slight pet theory that, I mean, I know that it's impossible to prove this, but I think there's a kind of, it feels very relevant now in a way that I don't know if it has at any other time. I think that's maybe explains why there's a documentary and everything else all at the same time. And I think that's something to do with the fact that I know my access point to the 70s is films of that time, and they all have this paranoid quality, right? And there's a sort of, you've got the golden age of journalism, you've got Watergate, but also journalism is moving into this sensationalized, if it bleeds, it leads mentality. And you've got Vietnam. There's as much as she's having a breakdown, it's arguable that America is having there's something going on with America too. And certainly, if it bleeds, it leads goes directly to clickbait mentality. And the notion that fear can manipulate, control, and generate, whatever, is hardly alien in America right now. So I think there's a kind of relevancy.
And I also, just to jump on something you said as I was answering the question, which was, it is a very unusual female character to lead a story, yes. And it's, I think, something that's kind of scary to some people, to have a female lead who, who can be odd and strange and isn't the classic romantic lead or anything. I mean, it's just there's a lot of elements that make it a difficult character and a difficult story to tell. And I think that, it's a kind of perfect
Likability.
storm. Sorry, go ahead.
It's that likability question,
The likability thing.
I think, hallelujah, it's so great that women are starting to get to be heroes in big things, and that's really important and long overdue. I think the next step is going to be allowing them to be anti-heroes, and it is this question of likability, which is a sort of sexist concept in itself. It's like you don't even question that. Some of my acting heroes have built careers on playing these characters that do horrendous things and are repellent and yet lovable. They're not likable, but they're lovable. And I think Christine is one of those characters, and it's one that it's something that it's like the thing that I want to do with my career. And I've never gotten the opportunity because you don't see the scripts. So, that's probably why a little bit too.
And suicide is this thing you don't talk about.
Taboo.
You don't mention, like when it comes up, it's like, oh God, what a terrible shame. Like people are really, really reluctant to talk about that topic at the expense of understanding it, Like if we talked about it more, maybe we could get our heads around it a little bit. And it's a problem that just like keeps growing. It's like there's all this literature on it, like in the last 40 years, like suicide has climbed like 60%. It's like some obscene percentage. Like 60% of the population now is from 40 years ago. It's the number 3 cause of death in a certain age bracket, like 18 to 44. And people do it for various reasons, but the common theme in public discourse about it is that you just really don't get into it. So it's a hard thing to center a movie around.
Was it a struggle to get financed because of all that you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
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 What was some of the
Low-budget
pushback
movie.
you received, if you can
I
share
don't.
that?
I don't even remember.
It's all versions of what we're saying.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just you don't
Suicide female character.
like once you start to actually make the movie, you kind of put away all that stuff.
Yeah.
And we had a great champion in a guy named Robert Halmy Jr., who has a company named Great Point Media, and they got behind the film 100%. And they've been doing some really cool, risky stuff. I mean, and they were very hands off. They were amazing in that way.
It was really special. That's the first time I've ever experienced that, actually, where it was just like no questions asked. We have your backs. It was very cool. But leading up to us finding them, it was difficult, and there was a lot of what if she were like this, like sort of stuff, and just like
Let's
talking
change the ending.
around the issue, and being like who's really gonna want to see this?
And then it's like when but it took somebody to finally see like that our vision of the thing was very palpable and accessible, and that the world was weird and quirky and interesting, and that there was humor and there was ultimately a lot of humanity and pathos and all that stuff that you need. And you realize that so many people that in the past, that the people that didn't get it, they were being short-sighted about it, and kind of. And just like Craig said, like there's certain things. A movie about suicide that's just weird. But then the reality is that if you frame it as a movie about suicide, that's the wrong way to frame it, because it's not. It's just something that she happens to do. It's a part of the story
It's not about it.
It's not. Yeah, I mean that's just a tiny bit of it. It's like if we could change that, we would have changed that right away. Like we don't want her to die. Like we didn't. Like if we could have, that would have been the best thing in the world if we could rewrite that ending.
Yeah.
Like it would have made our lives so much easier if she didn't do it. Like honestly, it'd be like, Jesus God, like why does she have to do it? And the other thing in terms of telling the story, you were like, this can't be bleak. It has to be life. It has to have moments of good and brightness, because because it wasn't just like, it was bleak sex, and then she committed suicide. It was like, no, life was going on, and there was real ups and real downs, but she was trapped in this prison of her own mind, and she couldn't experience it.
I think one of the triumphs of the film is that there is something quite optimistic at the core of it, which is a bit odd, I know, but I really do believe this, and the more I see it, the more I feel this. And that's that Christine is someone who gets up every day and goes through life trying to perform what she perceives to be normal. You know, and she's looking at everyone going, am I doing a good job? Am I succeeding at this? Is this working? Am I getting away with it? And sometimes she is really good at it, like in her work. And sometimes she is terrible at it to the point that it's comedic and catastrophic and awful. But regardless of whether she is good or bad at it, there is a community around her that doesn't mind, that actually does accept her and respects her and loves her and tries to help. They have no idea why she is what she is, but they do accept her. And I think that is actually quite a humanistic message at the core of it, because it suggests, you know, we all can relate to the fact that in our darkest moments, we assume that the world isn't going to accept who we are, or that we're doing very good at being us today, you know, and that I think is actually quite positive.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. The woman near the middle, yeah. Microphone? Oh, someone already has a microphone. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Did you ever give much consideration then to doing a more fictionalized version of the story, and like how important was it that some of the more concrete elements stay in the film versus, you know, sort of changing anything for artistic license or anything like that?
You know, we did take artistic license with the story. Some things are versions of the truth, but there were certain things the sort of like hard facts of things, like the things that we knew, we had to stay true to. I mean, I would say the majority of what we did was actually kind of not include certain things as opposed to change things.
It was mostly omitting things, which was how we deviated from her story. There's a lot of fact about her life in there, actually. But imagining like how two types of people talk to one another, like scene to scene, you have to take license with that stuff, and then that, you know, informs the narrative part of it, and then you end up coming up with additional stuff. But the spine of the movie is pretty close to what we understood to her to be.
Well, I mean, but there are things that are where Craig was going on something that we knew or that was like documented. Like, for example, the George character was somebody who did do TA. We knew that the TA in the film, there's this thing that the anchor character does that's called transactional analysis, and we knew that the character that was based on did do that. And we knew that in reality, Christine was in love with that character in real life. So those are the things that we knew, and then the creative license was, well, they probably went out together, there was probably something, you know, and then imagining how that would go. So there are things I think,
Well, there was an
there
actual,
are things like that.
Yeah, well, it was a combining of things, because there was, in this same scene he's talking about, in real life there was a misunderstanding, like misconnection that's very similar to what you see in the movie that didn't take that exact shape, so we sort of grafted those two ideas and took this idea that he's in this esque cult thing and made a scene out of it. So yeah, there was a little like bobbing and weaving, but you know, we didn't put anything in there that felt patently false, and mostly it was about stripping stuff away that we either couldn't find a way to incorporate or didn't feel okay about incorporating.
There were some things that even like that were just that I think if we put them in, people might not believe them. Like the standard, she had a standard poodle named Purse Capacity that was like everywhere. Then I mean, even, you know, we had to take a little bit of dramatic license with how things unfolded too, because there was a certain macabre sense of humor that she had towards the end. So, you know, we were true to her sense of humor and the kind of jokes that she told, and that was very true to the Christine that we've read about and we had heard about. But she had made jokes specifically like, wouldn't it be crazy if I blew my brains out on TV? And a guy said, no, that's a terrible joke. And she would laugh it off. She did that a couple times before the day. And we just couldn't figure out how to include something like that into a story, we had to omit stuff like that.
Yeah.
I have the mic. Hi. So you said you shot in 29 days, and you've touched base a little bit on the financial support. And I just want to know, like, if you can take us through how did you manage to shoot in 29 days? And was it because of money, or what? Like, if you can just tell us about that.
So day one, first shot was. It's fine. Of course, it's, if we had
Who wants to make a film in
no
29
one wants
days?
to. I mean,
But the fact that we had 29 days was like a luxury.
Yeah.
that's
on
like
this side of the
24
Yeah.
has become kind of
24 's
standard now.
almost
Like
normal.
everybody's like, how many days you shoot your movie? And they're like, they're 24. And so 29 felt like, whoa. I mean, I've only shot films in 24. I've sometimes come in under in like 22 or 23, but
Clint Eastwood over here.
yeah. Clint Eastwood. But it's not ideal, when you go back to and you look at the 70s and you look at those character dramas and like Taxi Driver and the De Palma movies and all those movies we love and talk about, those movies were made in like 65 days. Those were like long, very, very like, they had their time to work on scenes, luxurious. So they were working on scenes and we can't afford that anymore. So 29 days was a luxury, and also 29 days was principle, and we had the benefit of, Craig and Melody as producers did a very good job at sort of cordoning off a certain amount of money so that we had a few more days after we finished shooting principal photography and after we got to edit a little bit to do some pickup days, inserts, close-ups, things like things that you don't necessarily think you need on the day that you're shooting and you only realize later, which is also a luxury. So, but that was, it's all just kind of just bare bones and keeping it simple and trying to do as much prep work as possible. The other way that I think that you can do, you can get really good work in a short period of time is if you edit as you go along. My wife was editing every day. So if we shot on a Monday, by the end of Tuesday, she had all of Monday ready to watch. Everything that was shot on Monday, like in order and selected, and then she was already getting a go on Tuesday. So at the end of the week, we would have an assembly of everything that we had shot. And by the end of 3 weeks, we could watch a version of the movie, basically.
We were shooting essentially sequentially. So like towards the end of principal production, we sat down and watched the movie, like right at the end.
And we could say, you know what, we need, which was amazing because then the last couple of days of shooting, there was just a lot of things that we then knew that we wanted to get, or it's just that kind of thing. It just takes a lot of coordinating and you're kind of multitasking as you're going, and also just you're being as precise and specific as possible as you shoot, so there's no time wasted.
We have time for one more question. Yeah.
Hi, I'm just curious to know how many drafts of the script did you go through? And I know you kind of said you omitted some stuff, but did the drafts change a lot through production, or were they pretty much set in stone? And sorry, just one more question. You as the director, I'm so sorry, I blanked on your name right now.
My name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm a terrible person.
Figure it out later.
I'm the worst. Did you kind of get the opportunity to get your hands on the script, or Craig, did you kind of just like do all of the writing?
So there were, I would say, there was a draft I wrote before I had done much on the ground research. So I had like a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that was the first draft. Then I went down to Florida and met a bunch of people that had known her and visited various places in her life, and that heavily informed that draft. So that was like the second draft. When Antonio came on, I would say we did another big overhaul of the script, and then probably in between then and when we started filming, we probably did another push. But those are the big ones. I would say every few weeks we were grinding on the script, making micro revisions. And we only ever just dated the drafts, but I have a folder in my computer where there's probably 300 like dated, 7/29, 8/15, like 8/23, that are incorporating things we talked about, trying things, throwing things out. And then on set, we were changing script pages daily.
And then in terms of me getting my hands on, I didn't type a word into a computer. I mean, in the process of collaborating, you come up with ideas and you throw things around. But this is Craig's script, As a director coming onto a project that I didn't write and I'm not a writer on, I respect the roles, and then once we start collaborating, we're collaborating, but it's ultimately his job to incorporate the ideas and the words onto the page.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, you three.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you so
And
much.
get out and see Christine. Thanks.
Thank you.